I like Across the Universe too. Because it's one of the best lyrics I've written, In fact, it could be the best, I don't know. I mean, it's one of the best. It's good poetry.
That's John Lennon, 40 years old, 3 months before his death, finally naming his favorite Beatles songs. Not the hits critics loved, not the ones that topped the charts, the ones that still meant something to him. We're counting down all 10, in his own words. And number 1, it's not what you think. In September 1980, journalist David Sheff flew to New York for what would become one of the most important interviews in rock history. Over 3 weeks, he sat with John Lennon in his Central Park West apartment, often in the bathroom, surrounded by stacks of Beatles albums, and went through the catalog song by song.
Sometimes you're in the mood for it and sometimes you're not, it's like anything. Some days I can talk about Beatles forever, sometimes I get sick to death of talking about them,
But on these days, he talked. And what came out was raw, honest, sometimes brutal, and sometimes surprisingly tender. The Playboy interview hit newsstands on December 6, 1980. 2 days later, John was gone. Here are the 10 Beatles songs John Lennon said were his favorites, and why they still haunted him at 40. Let's start with a surprise, because most people assume John dismissed the early teeny bopper stuff, a beautiful melody. That's John Lennon talking about a song from 1963, the one that broke America wide open. 17 years later, he wasn't embarrassed by it. He wanted to re-record it. That tells you something about the man who wrote Imagine and Working Class Hero. He still had love for the simple stuff when it was real. This one's from the White Album, written in India during the Maharishi meditation retreat. And John was very specific about why he loved it.
I couldn't sleep, I'm meditating all day, and then I couldn't sleep at night, and we're not supposed to leave the room because we're supposed to be in one room for 5. I managed to stay in a room for 5 days without ever going out. And I was so tired, I couldn't get to sleep, and the story is there. One of my favorite tracks.
It is.
Yeah. I just like the sound of it, and I sing it well, and I felt in a good mood when I wrote it. Well, not in a good mood when I wrote it. I felt like that, but I felt good about it.
He wasn't claiming it was a masterpiece. He just liked how it sounded. He liked his own voice on it. 3 in the morning. Exhausted, wired, unable to shut off his brain. That was John in India, and you can hear every second of it. Now we're getting into the psychedelic stuff, and John had a complicated relationship with this one.
I always like Walrus, Strawberry Fields, Help, In My Life. Those are some favorites,
But here's where it gets interesting, because in the longer Playboy interview, he admitted the whole thing was kind of a put-on.
I thought, well, they get away with this artsy-fartsy crap.
Yeah.
There's been more said about Dylan's wonderful lyrics than there ever is in the lyrics at all. And mine too, but him to take a prime example because the intellectuals that read or listen to Dylan or the Beatles, and he got away with murder. I thought, well, I can write this crap too.
That's funny.
You just take a few images together, thread them together, and you call it poetry, or maybe it is, then that's poetry.
Yeah.
I did look back at Walrus and realize, I said I'm the Walrus, but the Carpenter's the good guy in that story, apparently.
So here's the thing. John loved the song, but he was also kind of mocking himself for writing it. He admitted he was playing a game, seeing if he could get away with nonsense lyrics the way Dylan did, and it worked. People have been analyzing I Am the Walrus for decades. Books have been written about it, and John's sitting there going, it just meant nothing, But he still loved it, because it sounded incredible. This one's a curveball, because John didn't write it. Paul did. But when asked about his favorite Beatles songs,
Here, There, and Everywhere.
Paul's song completely, I believe, and one of my favorite songs of Beatles.
one of his favorites, a Paul McCartney love ballad, from a guy who spent years publicly feuding with Paul. And this wasn't a one-time compliment. Paul himself has talked about how rare John's praise was.
Here, There and Everywhere was one of my songs on it. And remember John said just when it finishes, that's a really good song, that. I love that song. And I was like, yes, he likes it. I've remembered it to this day. It's pathetic, really.
Did you ever heap praise on him?
Yeah, I would tell him his stuff was great. You'd normally have to be a little bit drunk. It helped.
That's how rare John's praise was. Paul remembered one compliment for the rest of his life. Now we're getting personal, because Help wasn't just a song for John, it was a confession.
Help. Why help? Because I meant it. It's real. The lyric is good now as it was then. It's no different, And it makes me feel secure to know that I was that sensible or whatever, that not sensible, but aware of myself. Then that's when, with no acid, no nothing, pot or whatever, that doesn't mean a thing, really. It was just me singing Help, and I meant it,
That phrase, "I meant it," comes up over and over when John talks about his favorite songs. But with Help, he went even deeper.
I was grossly overweight and needed help, and only one critic reviewer ever spotted it, and it was Al Aronowitz. And he wrote it in the New York Post or wherever he was writing. He said, Johnny, or whatever he was from, is crying out for help. And I didn't realize that I was at the time. I was just writing a song for I'd been commissioned to write a song for the movie. And I came out with Help. And Al Aronowitz's review of it said he's crying for help. I was crying for help.
He was 24 years old, the most famous person on the planet, and he was drowning. He put it right there in the song. But here's the tragedy. He didn't like the recording.
I don't like the recording that much. The song I like. We did it too fast to try and be commercial.
They sped it up to make it a hit, and in doing so, they buried the pain underneath an upbeat tempo. John never forgave that. If you know anything about the Beatles, you knew this one was coming, the crown jewel of Sgt. Pepper.
Day in the life. Oh yeah, it was important to me because I thought it was a damn good piece of work, that's all. Yeah.
A damn good piece of work. High praise from a guy who spent half the interview tearing his own songs apart, but then he explained how it came together.
He had that one little lick floating around in his head. He couldn't use it for anything. He stuck it on. Now, instead of going on and developing that lick into the middle eight, which we would normally do, we got into how about putting a whole different song, which he already had, that had nothing to do with Day in the Life.
Two fragments that shouldn't work together, stitched with an orchestra ascending into chaos.
That's a combination of two separate pieces of Paul and mine stuck together and forced into a song.
Stuck together, forced. That's how John described one of the greatest songs ever recorded, and somehow it became a masterpiece. John named this one explicitly multiple times across multiple interviews.
I always like Walrus, Strawberry Fields, Help, In My Life. Those are some favorites,
And when he talked about why, he got autobiographical.
It's a Salvation Army home that was near the house I lived in with my auntie in the suburbs. And Strawberry Fields was just round the corner from that, which was an old Victorian house converted for Salvation Army orphans. And as a kid, I used to go to their garden parties where they would have, a garden party, and me and my friends, Ivan and Nigel and Pete, we'd all go up there and hang out and sell lemonade bottles for a penny, and we always had fun at Strawberry Fields.
Both songs, Strawberry Fields and In My Life, were about Liverpool, about childhood, about memory. John wasn't just writing pop songs. He was excavating his own past, trying to make sense of a childhood fractured by his mother's death, his father's absence, and the strange loneliness of growing up as an outsider. That's what made Strawberry Fields special. It wasn't fantasy, it was memory, distorted through the lens of nostalgia and psychedelics. This is the one John was most enthusiastic about. Listen to how he describes it.
Come Together is me writing obscurely around an old Chuck Berry thing. It's one of my favorite Beatles tracks. Well, one of my favorite Lennon tracks, I'd say that. It's really the kind of music I like.
Yeah, the beginning.
It's funky, it's bluesy, and I'm singing it pretty well. And I like the sound of the record. You can dance to it. I'll buy it.
You can dance to it. That's what John Lennon was proud of. Not the artistic ambition, not the critical acclaim, the groove. And then he dropped this bomb about its origin.
And Come Together was an expression that Leary and Rosemary had come up with for his attempt at being president or whatever he wanted to be. And they'd asked me to write them a single, a song, a campaign song. And I tried and I tried and I tried and I couldn't come up with it. But I came up with this Come Together, which would have been no good to, they couldn't have a campaign song like that, right?
A presidential campaign song that turned into one of the Beatles' most iconic tracks. Only John Lennon, the bass line, the whispered vocals, that weird swampy atmosphere. It's unlike anything else in their catalog.
The song remains independent of Chuck Berry or anybody else on earth.
Come together right now over me.
Now we're at the top. And John's praise for this one was the highest he gave any song.
I like Across the Universe too. Because it's one of the best lyrics I've written, you know. In fact, it could be the best, I don't know. I mean, it's one of the best, it's good poetry, you know.
The best, not one of, the best. That's John Lennon ranking his own work and putting Across the Universe at the very top, lyrically. But here's the heartbreaking part. The song came to him at 3 in the morning, lying next to his first wife after an argument.
Across the Universe, I was lying next to my first wife in bed, you know, and I was thinking, it was starting off as a negative song, you know. She must have been going on and on about something, and she'd gone to sleep, and I kept hearing his words are flowing out like endless streams, and I was a bit irritated, and I went downstairs, and it turned into a sort of cosmic song rather than why are you always mouthing off at me or whatever, right?
Nobody was interested in the tune, you know, in doing it originally. Everybody was sick, and it's a sort of...
I was so disappointed by it. It never went out as the Beatles. The guitars are out of tune. I'm singing out of tune because I'm psychologically destroyed and nobody's supporting me or helping me with it. And the song was never done properly. But the words stand luckily by themselves, and the words were purely inspirational and were given to me as boom like that, except for maybe one or two where I had to resolve a line or something like that. It was a pure... I don't own it, you know, it came through like that.
He wrote what he considered his greatest lyric, and nobody cared. The band was falling apart, the recording was botched, and John felt completely alone. And finally, the one John Lennon called his first real piece of work.
In my life was, I think, my first real major piece of work. Up till then it had all been sort of glib and throwaway. And that was the first time I consciously put my literary part of myself onto the lyric, inspired by Kenneth Alsop and Bob Dylan.
Not Revolution, not Imagine, not even Strawberry Fields. In My Life, it's 1965, Rubber Soul. That's the song John pointed to as the moment he became a real songwriter. The moment he stopped writing love songs for teenage girls and started writing about himself. There's that word again, real. The song began as a bus journey from his childhood home at 251 Menlove Avenue, naming every Liverpool landmark he could remember. Penny Lane, Strawberry Fields, tram sheds. But he scrapped all of it.
In My Life started out as a bus journey from my house in 251 Menlove Avenue to town, mentioning every place that I could remember.
Eventually, the specific places became universal, and the song became eternal. Mojo magazine later named In My Life the best song of all time. Rolling Stone ranked it among the greatest ever written. George Martin called the piano solo one of his proudest contributions to the Beatles catalog. John was 25 when he wrote it. He had another 15 years to live, and he'd already captured something that would outlast him. What's fascinating about this list is what it reveals about John Lennon at 40. He didn't pick the biggest hits, he picked the honest ones. The ones where he meant every word, the ones that scared him a little to write. Help was a cry for help nobody heard. In My Life was an excavation of memory. Across the Universe came through him like a gift he didn't deserve. John Lennon at 40 wasn't nostalgic for fame. He was nostalgic for truth. And the songs that made this list were the ones where he'd managed, somehow, to tell it. Which one surprised you most? Let me know in the comments. And if you love stories straight from music legends, hit subscribe. More are already on the way.